Hi there, my name is Anna Intiasari Tubbs. You can hear my baby in the background, Michael Malachi, playing, so you'll probably hear him throughout the video. I was asked to answer a few questions about my experience working with my doulas, which was absolutely incredible. So the first thing is why I sought a doula. I knew from multiple different stories and also media headlines and all of these things written about Black women and maternity and birth that it was quite a dangerous experience for Black women in America to go into hospitals seeking care when they were ready to deliver. We know that maternity rates or maternity mortality rates are so high in our country, and that they're even higher for communities of color. And so I actually had a lot of fear around that. And so I sought a doula because I wanted somebody who could advocate for me with medical professionals. I wanted somebody who could help me feel like I was informed on what decisions I was going to make around my birth experience, and also that I was heard. And I wanted things to be explained to me in a way that didn't make me feel, I don't know, like I should have understood it beforehand, but that met me where I was and respected me and allowed me to ask however many questions I wanted to. And luckily I did find that with my OBGYN as well, but having my doula has really empowered me and helped me feel and reminded me that I had control over my birth experience rather than feeling like things were completely out of my control. Question number 2 is whether I found the visits to be educational, the prenatal visits. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. It was so helpful to have initial exposure to what was going to happen on day of, and to go over scenarios multiple different times, and to think about all the different kinds of possibilities with my doulas. And I felt so prepared for the moment that it really calmed me, versus it being this sort of completely surprise, unknown experience that you're just going to kind of have to deal with. And it feels like everybody else who talks to you about it is kind of like, I don't know, it makes you scared about how much it's going to hurt or how much it's going to happen and how little you can control it. And I think that having my doulas and having my prenatal visits helped me to feel really prepared. And I understood what I was being, what people talked about. And it really helped pair with the visits that we had at the hospital as well. So I understood what Pitocin was. I understood really what an epidural was. I understood what my options were going to be. So it was extremely helpful to have that beforehand. One of the most powerful parts of working with my doulas was the fact that my partner, my husband, felt prepared as well. It was really important that I didn't feel like I was doing this alone. I think a lot of times the way we picture labor is the mom going into it and kind of just like yelling about how upset she is about going through the pain, and she's kind of the only one that, I don't know, is doing the work associated with bringing the baby into this world. While a lot of times in heteronormative situations, the partner is just kind of sitting there and like patting her on the shoulder, or is kind of a step back from it. And I really didn't want that to be my experience. I didn't want that to be my family's experience. I wanted to feel like my husband was right by my side, that he knew what to do, he knew how to support me, and that we were bringing our child into this world with love and support and care for each other. And having our doulas really helped my husband feel prepared. He also knew what to expect out of the experience. He wasn't going to, for instance, say when I was in pain that I needed the epidural, but instead would encourage me if I didn't want to have it, would help to support me through that. So instead of getting scared or saying, you know, this is something that she needs, he understood what my decisions were ahead of time as well. And he knew why I was making my decisions. And so I kind of think, however it is that women want to bring their child into this world, it's important that their partners feel informed on that decision and that they're just as prepared for the moment, because they can do so much to help you through it. Obviously it's nowhere close to how much you're going to be going through birthing the child, but having a partner who feels like they know what they're supposed to do and options to support you through it, whether that's giving you a massage or telling you what it is that you need to hear or creating a playlist for you beforehand, advocating for your decisions and helping you remember in those moments of vulnerability and extreme pain why you made those decisions beforehand. So it was hugely beneficial for my husband as well as for me to work with our doulas. The thing I would say I appreciated the most from working with doulas was the fact that I felt so incredibly empowered from the moment I started working with them to the closing ceremony and even beyond. They reminded me from our first meeting that this was the experience, that it could be the experience that I wanted it to be. I think I initially said, I'm so afraid because I know a lot of this is out of my control. And Samsara reminded me from the very first meeting, actually so much of it is within your control and can go according to how you plan for it to go, which was completely opposite of what I was expecting of my birth experience. And every time I had a question, there was a constant reminder that I could do this, that I was strong enough to do this, that I was powerful enough to do this. That carried through 100% during my birth and labor experience. Anytime I felt like a little bit weak or I started to feel like maybe I couldn't finish, there was a constant reminder that I could, and I was supported in that, and it just made me feel like a superhuman. And beyond that, there's a lot of things that I forgot about my labor experience. So when I was able to go through my closing ceremony led by Mika, I felt again, wow, I get celebrated that these 40 weeks that I just carried this child, it's not forgotten. And pictures that were taken during my labor reminded me of how incredible it was that I did what I wanted to do in the way that I wanted to do it. So the thing I appreciated most in summary from working with my 3 doulas, Samsara, Mika, and Kathleen, was that I was empowered and I was made to feel celebrated. I was made to feel strong. And it's a feeling that I'll never let go of. I would absolutely recommend this style of doula care to other women and other families. I already, with all my friends, have mentioned that it is the thing that made my birth experience exactly what I wanted it to be. The prenatal care was amazing and also extremely helpful, but especially even if it was just that one moment of having my doulas in the room with me when I was bringing our child into the world, that one moment would have been worth all of it. It was something that I think so many women don't get to experience, the kind of celebration of my body that I experienced, and the empowering nature with which I was able to control the experience. And even when I was going through moments that felt really scary for me, even for a second, I regained that sense of peace. Just having my doulas in the room with me, giving me a massage, making sure the room was lit in the way that I wanted it to, that there were no super bright lights, that there were calming sounds, that my husband knew what to do to help me through it. So absolutely, I would recommend it, and I felt like I was safe. I think one of the things that I could have been afraid of if I had gone in with the birth plan that I did end up having, I might have at some points questioned myself because maybe I wouldn't have understood why I was not wanting to be on an IV and why I wanted to be able to be moving the whole time and why I didn't want to be monitored the entire time. And all of these things wouldn't have made complete sense to me. But once I was able to understand those things through our prenatal training, it allowed me to have the birth experience that I honestly didn't even know was possible, especially at a hospital, to be moving around all over the place. I barely sat still. And to go through 15 hours of labor without any kind of medication. So absolutely, I would recommend this style of doula care for anybody who wants their birth to go the way that they plan. I would say that my labor experience really began 2 days before we went to the hospital. My son was born on a Saturday morning, and on the Thursday night before that, I was experiencing a ton of Braxton Hicks contractions back to back to back. And I didn't want to get my husband too excited or anything, since that could, mean obviously I already knew that it was happening soon. But I had a feeling that it was going to be happening even sooner than I was thinking. So that Thursday I had those Braxton Hicks contractions. Then the Friday morning that I woke up, when I woke up, I should say, I went to the restroom and then noticed the bloody show. So I texted my doulas, let them know that was happening, and they, I would say, had this balance between making sure I was both excited but also not too excited, because that could just indicate that we had a couple days left still. And so they told me to continue to do what I was doing that day, but just to kind of relax and not push myself too hard. And so I decided to go to yoga that morning, and I'd been doing yoga throughout my pregnancy. So that was really when I knew actually that my son was coming again soon. I didn't know how soon, but I could feel that it seemed like overnight he had descended, because a lot of my yoga poses were they just felt different than they had before that moment. So after that, I decided I'm going to start relaxing a little bit more, but I still don't want to get too excited, so I was updating my doulas. I started to then kind of get premenstrual cramps, which obviously I hadn't had in quite a few months before that. So I texted the doulas that as well. Again, I was met with really great reassurance. You know, this is possible that it's going to happen relatively soon, but again, it could be a couple more days. So just take it easy and keep us updated, and start to think about if you notice any pattern in these cramps, like how long they're lasting, if they're coming and going, are they persistent, anything like that. So I went and got my nails done, and I started to notice while I was at the nail salon that they were getting more and more intense. And so similarly to what I told my yoga instructor after my class, I also told my favorite ladies at the nail salon that I thought that my child was going to be born that day. And so I got home, texted the doulas, told them I was still having my cramps, and they said, okay, well, maybe now's a good time to nap, because if it's happening tonight, then you're going to need energy. And so I took that advice. I took a nap around 5 p.m. and around 6:30 my husband came home from work, and I told him, you know, these cramps are getting kind of severe, and maybe we should just like order in food and just take it easy for the night, and I'll just keep updating our doulas via text. And so he left to go and get us some Thai food, and by the time he got back, what I thought were cramps, contractions, were starting to get closer together and more intense. And so I told him he should start timing them. So turns out when he did start timing them, I didn't realize that there was a pattern without timing them. I kind of just thought they were coming randomly. But when he did start timing them, they were happening almost exactly 5 minutes apart. So I texted Samsara, Mika, and Kathleen to let them know that there was a pattern. And still then, I remember them saying, you know, okay, this is possible that it's happening tonight, but again, we don't want to get you too excited because this still could just be, you know, false labor. So I just kept updating them, told my husband I'm pretty sure we're in labor, and he started to walk me through some of the steps that he'd been trained on during our prenatal classes. And so he ran a bath for me, started playing the labor playlist, and it was a really beautiful moment for the two of us to just be alone through that. And he kept reminding me that we were about to meet our child, which was really emotional for me. And I was kind of like starting to feel these contractions, and was maybe feeling a little scared. He reminded me that we were prepared for this and we were ready. So they started to get more and more intense. We'll kind of fast forward. And I let the doulas know that I was pretty sure this was the real deal. And so Mika and Kathleen started heading our way. We live in Stockton, so they started heading towards us from Oakland. And they got here, I want to say, around 11. So this is already between like 6:30 and 11 that my contractions really had gotten quite intense. And at this point when they got here, I was laying on the ground in our bedroom. I was on my side. I didn't really feel like I could stand up anymore or walk. And I also felt a lot of pressure. And so I really thought that we were a lot closer to our son's arrival than we ended up being. But I kept telling them, you know, we need to go to the hospital. I think the baby's coming soon. We didn't know the sex at that point. And so, bless their souls, they're so sweet, even though I'm sure they knew I was not as far along as I thought. sorry about that, a package was getting delivered. That I don't think that they thought I was as long as I thought I was. They still were supportive, and I was, again, in control. So when I said I want to go to the hospital, they were like, all right, let's go to the hospital. So we got to the hospital, checked into the triage room, and they checked my cervix. They asked me how much pain I was in before that, and on a scale of 1 to 10, and I said a 10. I was like, there's no way this is gonna could get any harder. I don't think I could stand any more pain. And they checked my cervix, and I was actually only at 3 centimeters, which came as a complete shock to me. I really, again, thought that we were very close to my baby's arrival, and we just were not as close as I thought. And the nurse said, you could go home at this point. You're still in early labor. However, we're going to keep you for an hour, and we'll see how fast you're progressing. And depending on that, we'll see if we're going to keep you or if you want to go home. Because I had said on my birth plan that I wanted most of my labor to happen at home. And so they kept me there for an hour, and in an hour I got to 4, which for me felt, kind of excruciating. It didn't really feel like that was moving quickly, but it was, again, this is another example of why having my doulas there was so important. They reminded me that was fast progress, and that I was opening. I think at that point I was already like 90% effaced, and my son was sitting quite low, and he was putting a lot of pressure on me. That's why it did feel like he was quite low, but my cervix was not dilated as much as I thought it was. And so Mika and Kathleen both assured me that I was doing really well, and that it was progressing steadily. And so we stayed at the hospital. At that point, they put us in the room, my actual room, and brought my exercise ball and everything that I had requested. And I remember, I don't remember which doula, if it was Kathleen or Mika, had these kind of those fake candles, and they'd lowered the lights, and Michael was right by me. My husband was right by me the entire time. And I just remember feeling in that moment, okay, I thought like I was so much closer than I was, and if I'm gonna get through this, I need, in the way that I want to, I need to like kind of not be so dramatic about thinking, oh gosh, this is so painful, or reacting super loudly, or which was also have been fine, but for me, I wanted to have a little bit more of a peaceful experience if I could. And so I just realized I needed to really like get in my head and kind of have some introspection, and really connect deeply with myself and find that strength, rather than starting to kind of get overwhelmed by the fear of the incoming contractions, because it can just kind of start to feel like, is this ever going to end? And you don't have very much time in between. And so that part can get really scary. It's kind of a mental game. So fast forward past that, I won't give all of the details, but our son was born at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning. And so we labored through the night. Although I had a lot of moments where I felt, I kind of started to feel a little tempted to ask for medication, to ask for, I don't know, something. I just started to feel like I needed something else. And I asked Mika and I asked Kathleen, and kind of also asked my husband, what are my options? And I will say, to pause there for a second, that the nurses at the hospital really respected my birth plan. And they never asked me at any point if I wanted any medication. They were very respectful of what I asked for at the beginning. So I really appreciated that. They worked so well with my doulas. I feel like they really respected them, and that the team altogether really respected each other, and that they were all kind of listening to me and following my lead. Because throughout the whole process, I was able to get in whatever position I wanted to get into. I was able to take a hot shower. And again, my partner, having been in all the prenatal classes with me, knew exactly what I wanted, so he was next to me the entire time. It just really definitely felt like, I was doing this really incredible thing, and that I was the star of the show, but that I wasn't doing it alone, and that my whole team was behind me in the way that we had practiced. And even those that were not there for a lot of our kind of study sessions, like the nurses, they really joined the team in such a beautiful and harmonious way. And I appreciated that so much. So anyways, yeah, I did all of those things, was able to move around. I also had a moment where I was starting to get dehydrated because at some point I threw up the pad thai that I'd eaten earlier that night. And those were moments that I wasn't expecting. I actually didn't know I was going to throw up. I didn't know that I was going to kind of feel the shivers or that I was going to get really, really hot at one point. But having my doulas right by my side, they reminded me constantly, this is normal. This is what I kept asking for, were checkpoints that I was kind of like moving on as I was supposed to. And they kept reminding me, this is normal. You're on to the next step. That's completely normal. You're on to the next step. You're doing beautifully. You're on to the next step. And hearing that over and over again from every one of my teammates was incredibly helpful. So yeah, I ended up pushing for about 20 minutes before my son arrived into the world, and it was just the most incredible thing. And I'll say that I had forgotten a lot of it. By the next kind of, I guess, like hour, you kind of, it feels almost surreal that you have accomplished this incredible feat. And it's almost like, did I really actually do that? And so one of my favorite parts of working with my doulas was having my closing ceremony where they wrote us letters and showed us pictures of the experience and gave me a lot of my memories back from the most important day of my life thus far. So I'm incredibly grateful. That's a summary of it because I have to get back to my son. But I do hope that this helps more women in making their decision. And I just want to say thank you to my doulas for all of the gifts that they gave me.